I always knew something was off when I found my cologne in her suitcase. Not just any cologne, the one she hated, the one she said made me smell like an arrogant banker with a drinking problem. It was zipped into the side pocket of her carry-on, next to a red lace thong I didn't recognize and a travel-size bottle of lube. I stood there in the bedroom, watching her hum as she packed, and I smiled, because that was the moment I realized my honeymoon would be the perfect place to bury the last trace of the woman I married. We weren't even supposed to go. 2 weeks earlier, I caught her cheating. Not a hunch, not a suspicion, actual proof. I'd come home early from work to grab my laptop charger and found a pair of men's socks drying on the bathroom heater. Gray, ankle cut, Nike. I don't wear ankle socks. She said they were probably her brother's. Her brother, who lives in Portland and hadn't set foot in our house in 2 years. She even tried to double down, laughing it off, giving me that manipulative little nose crinkle she used to weaponize when we were dating. But the real kicker? I checked our Nestcam history. The feed she forgot I had access to. No sound, but the visuals were enough. Him walking in, shirtless, her wrapped in a towel. The way she moved, the casual brush of her hand on his chest. No brother hugs like that, not unless your family tree grows in circles. I said nothing. Just watched, cataloged, smiled. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She even suggested we still go on the honeymoon to reset, she said. Said it like we were some damn router and Aruba was the power button. I agreed. Told her I forgave her. Even booked the upgraded suite myself, with ocean views and a private balcony jacuzzi. She was ecstatic. I was calculating. The first few days I played my part well. Morning beach walks, couple massages, champagne by the infinity pool. I even read her a chapter from that Godawful Colleen Hoover book she liked, just to lull her into thinking I'd really buried the hatchet. And to her credit, she played along. She smiled wider, kissed longer, moaned louder, trying to erase her guilt with performance. But guilt doesn't dissolve in salt water. And I'd already bought her ticket to hell. Midway through the trip, I told her I wasn't feeling well. Blamed it on the fish from the night before. I told her to go enjoy the local markets without me. You deserve to have some fun. She kissed my forehead and told me she loved me. I kissed her back and told her the same. Then, the moment she left, I texted Casey. Now, Casey had always been her wild-card friend, the one with too many piercings, a taste for tequila, and a not-so-subtle crush on me. The one my wife swore was harmless. The one she once said would bang anything with a six-pack and a pulse. I had a six-pack and a plan. And Casey? Casey had a grudge. Apparently, my wife had stolen her college boyfriend back in the day. I didn't even have to push hard. One message, won a free trip to Aruba and a chance to piss off someone who deserves it? And Casey was booked. She arrived 2 hours after my wife left the suite. We didn't waste time. We drank, we talked, we laughed like old lovers even though we'd never kissed before that afternoon. And when we did, it was electric. Not because of passion, but because of purpose. Every moan she made was a nail in my wife's ego. Every scratch down my back was a reminder that betrayal cuts both ways. And I made sure we were loud. Hotel walls are thin. And Casey? Casey knew how to perform. Around 6:30 p.m., I heard the keycard beep. My wife came in humming, probably expecting to find me curled up watching TV. She stopped mid-step. I didn't hear her drop her bag, but I heard the sound of disbelief leave her throat like a wounded animal. I didn't flinch. Didn't look up. Just kept moving, slow and deliberate, my hands on Casey's hips like I was sculpting revenge out of flesh. Casey turned, made eye contact with her, and smiled. "Hey babe," she said, mocking the exact tone my wife used to say to me every morning. My wife let out a strangled gasp and stumbled back. I finally turned to her. Looked her dead in the eyes. "You're early," I said, calm as a corpse. "Room service hasn't brought the champagne yet." She stood there frozen, lips trembling, mascara already starting to bleed under her eyes. "How could you?" she started, voice cracking. I raised a hand. "Don't. You already did. I'm just evening the scoreboard." I reached into the drawer beside the bed and pulled out the envelope I'd prepared. Divorce papers, pre-signed by me, with a note attached. "No takebacks. You burned the bridge. I built a new one and slept on it." She didn't cry. She held. Some kind of primal sound, wounded and furious. But I felt nothing. No guilt. No shame. Just relief. The kind of relief you feel when you finally throw away something rotten that's been stinking up your house. That moment, watching her crumble while Casey lit a cigarette in my bed, was better than any orgasm she'd ever given me. And the best part? I still had 4 more days in paradise. without the parasite. It started like all beautiful things end, slowly, silently, and disguised as progress. We'd been married for 3 years, and for most of it, I genuinely thought I'd won life's lottery. She was smart, stunning, driven, and the kind of woman who made people stop mid-conversation just to watch her walk past. And she was mine. That used to mean something. In the beginning, we shared everything. Coffee at 7 a.m., Sunday pancakes, late-night movies under a single blanket, even toothbrushes when traveling. We were annoyingly inseparable. She called me her person. But then, like a song gradually going out of tune, things began to shift. Not all at once, but in those quiet, deliberate ways that only make sense when you look back and realize how loud the silence had become. First, it was the gym. She said she wanted to get stronger, which I supported. She'd never cared about lifting before, but I bought her the leggings, the resistance bands, even a personalized meal plan. Then she started going at odd hours. Not the usual post-work slot. No, now it was 5 a.m. or 9 p.m. when the gym was almost empty. I'd offer to come with her, and she'd smile, almost pityingly, and say she needed her solo time. Okay, fair. We all need space. Then came the new wardrobe. Not completely out of left field, but different. Tighter, more expensive. Like she'd been watching influencer hauls at 3 a.m. Suddenly, she knew brands I'd never heard of, and boxes from online boutiques started showing up with increasing frequency. When I asked about them, she'd joke that I was sounding like her dad. The laughter didn't reach her eyes. Her phone became an extension of her body. It was always face down, always locked. Notifications were silenced. She started setting it on airplane mode while we were together, claiming she wanted to be more present, but I caught her turning it back on in the bathroom, twice. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being insecure. But even my dog started acting weird around her. He used to jump into her lap the moment she sat down. Now he watched her from across the room like he was trying to solve a puzzle. One night, I found her standing in the hallway, lights off, just staring out the window. She didn't flinch when I called her name, just said she was thinking. I asked what about. Life, she said. Where it's going. Where I'm going. I offered to talk about it. She said she needed to process it alone. Then she started reading self-help books. Those self-congratulatory manifestos that use words like alignment, sacred boundaries, and radical detachment. Her language changed. She started using phrases like, I need to honor my truth, and your energy feels heavy right now. Heavy? I wasn't even saying anything. One afternoon, she came home giddy, said she had signed up for a 3-day women's retreat. No phones, no contact. I offered to drive her there. She laughed. That defeats the purpose, babe. It's about separation. I noticed her ring wasn't on her finger when she came back. Said she left it on a river rock during a meditation exercise. It felt freeing, she whispered, as if she were letting me in on some deep personal epiphany. But it felt like a slow extraction, like she was pulling herself out of our life one brick at a time. She used to call me during lunch. Now I didn't even get a text. When I asked about it, she said, I'm trying to stay off screens. Except her screen time report popped up on our shared iPad. It had doubled. I chalked it up to stress. Work had been hard on her, or so she said. Late nights, early mornings. One evening, I swung by her office to surprise her with dinner. Her car wasn't there. Her assistant looked confused when I asked for her. She left an hour ago, she said. Something about a friend emergency. I drove home in silence. When she walked in, I didn't mention it. She was wearing different clothes than she had that morning. Her hair was freshly done, not like she'd been crying over a friend, more like she'd been prepping for someone else. She didn't offer an explanation, just kissed my cheek and went straight to the shower. I told myself not to dig. I wanted to believe. I needed to believe. Because the alternative, that she was drifting into someone else's arms while still sleeping in our bed, was too grotesque to accept without proof. But it wasn't just the behavior. It was the tone. She became patronizing, like I was some relic of her past self she was trying to grow out of. Every conversation felt like a therapy session where I'd missed the first half. When I'd joke like I used to, she'd sigh and say, You haven't evolved. Evolved into what? A doormat? A ghost? Her smiles were still there, but they stopped reaching me. They were aimed just past my shoulder, at some imagined future where I wasn't part of the picture. But I kept pretending, kept playing husband, kept making breakfast, folding her laundry, rubbing her shoulders after work. Because I wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. I didn't want to believe that the woman I built a life with was quietly tearing it down behind my back. I still loved her, but I could feel the cracks deepening beneath the illusion. And I knew, eventually, something would give. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary, forgettable, beige like most midweeks tend to be. She kissed me goodbye that morning too lightly, like she didn't want to leave a trace, and said she had a client dinner that would run late. Some networking thing for her startup. I nodded, wished her luck, and poured another coffee. I wasn't even suspicious anymore. Not really. I'd grown numb to the routines, her half-hearted excuses, the mechanical affection, the phantom scent of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her coat like a silent witness. But what I hadn't expected, what I hadn't braced for, was the email. Not the message itself, but what was attached to it. I was paying bills, scanning through our shared Gmail for the utilities login she'd changed without telling me. When I saw it, an auto-forwarded hotel reservation confirmation from 2 days prior. I opened it with a thumb that trembled just once before going still. The email was sent from her private address to our shared one, probably by mistake. Or maybe the email rules glitched. Doesn't matter. What mattered was the detail. A reservation for 2 nights. At a boutique resort just outside the city. A romantic suite. 1 king bed. Champagne package. Dinner for 2 at the rooftop bar. And then the names, hers and J. Merrick. Not my name. Not even close. I didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Just stared at it like it was a blank wall I was meant to walk through. My heartbeat didn't spike. I didn't rage. I didn't even curse. Something in me folded, like a tired lung finally giving up. But it wasn't defeat, it was transformation. I stood up, moved across the house, silent as a shadow, and grabbed her laptop from the shelf. She left it open, trusting foolish. Password saved. I typed Merrick into the search bar. Pages of chats. Google Docs of poetry drafts, hers. Annotated by him. Google Photos albums locked behind privacy settings, except for the shared ones I now had access to. Their faces, cheek to cheek, drinks raised, her hand not on the glass but on his chest. One video. Short. She's laughing. Then kissing him. Saying the words I hadn't heard in months. God, I missed you. I closed the tab. Walked back to the kitchen. Sat down. Stared at the wall. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I breathed in, once, and then everything went perfectly still. Not because I was in shock, but because I'd been waiting for this. Waiting for the undeniable. The inescapable. And now that it was here, clarity settled in like fresh snow. Cold. Quiet. Absolute. She came home at 10:37 p.m. That exact time is burned into me, not because she was late, but because she was humming. She walked through the door humming a song I hadn't heard before, wearing a silk blouse and no bra, her hair still damp from what she'd call a post-meeting sauna. She kissed my cheek, again, too light. Said, "You're still up?" I nodded. Smiled. Asked how the dinner went. Productive, she said. Might lead to an investor meeting next month. I told her I was proud. She beamed. Then walked into the bedroom, tossing her heels off like a teenager. I watched her disappear down the hall. I made a mental list. Every lie, every little shift, every whispered, "You're imagining it," that she fed me like poison over the past year. And in that moment, sitting in that worn leather chair we bought together 2 Christmases ago, I decided I would not rage. I would not weep. I would not beg for an explanation. That would give her power. I would give her nothing. Only the illusion of safety, of control, of victory. And when she least expected it, I would end her entire world, not in screams, but in silence. Not with fists, but with strategy. I'd already started to sketch the outline in my mind. I knew what she feared most: public shame, loss of status, social exile. I knew who she trusted, who she confided in. I knew which of her friends thought I was too quiet, too old-fashioned. I knew which of them had watched me with interest when her back was turned. The pieces were already there. She'd just given me the final one. A name, a hotel, a timestamp. And so I smiled to myself, stood up, and turned off the light. She was already in bed, scrolling through her phone, probably texting him good night. I slid in beside her. Didn't say a word. Just turned my back and stared at the wall. Not because I was hurt, but because war requires patience. And I had just become very, very patient. She had no idea she was being watched. Not by a private detective, not by some friend I confided in, but by me, her husband, sitting across the table each morning with a calm smile and a 1,000-yard stare, memorizing every detail she failed to hide. I didn't confront her, didn't tip my hand, Didn't even flinch when she kissed me goodbye and said she had another late night at the co-working space. I told her to work hard. I kissed her forehead. Then I went to my office, closed the door, and opened my laptop, not to cry, not to Google how to save a marriage, but to start building her cage. First, I tracked our finances. Not the obvious accounts, she'd be too smart for that. I went for the smaller ones, the ones we'd forgotten to unlink, a PayPal account tied to our old joint email, the shared credit card we stopped using after the cashback program expired. There it was. Recurring charges. A boutique hotel booked every other Thursday. Lyft rides to and from the same two addresses. A flower shop receipt marked pickup the day after she claimed her boss had given her those roses for Employee Appreciation Day. I screenshotted everything, archived it into a hidden folder labeled taxes, and kept going. Her gym visits didn't line up either. I called and posed as a billing rep from a fake wellness startup I invented on the spot. Said I was surveying gym clients about their experience. Her name wasn't on their system at all. She'd never been a member. She didn't even have a day pass history. When she came home that night, glowing and flushed and smelling of citrus and guilt, I asked how the new trainer was. She said he was amazing and totally changing how she views strength training. I nodded and said I'd love to meet him sometime. She laughed and said, "Oh, he's super busy." I smiled and watched her sip her wine, already caught, already unaware that she was bleeding out slowly under the surface. But I needed more. Proof that couldn't be denied. So I used her own paranoia against her. I asked a friend, someone she'd never met, to create a fake profile, complete with photos, job history, mutual interests. He slid into her DMs with a harmless comment about a book she'd posted. She took the bait in under an hour. I had screenshots within 2. By the next day, she was flirting back, telling this new man how trapped she felt, how misunderstood, how her husband means well, but he's just not the man I married anymore. That night, I made her favorite dinner, told her she deserved to feel appreciated. Watched her fake surprise. She thought she was manipulating me, stringing me along for convenience, for comfort. But I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her executioner, disguised as the man she used to love. I started watching her friends more closely too, especially Casey, the wild one, the one with no filter and a history of oversharing. I tagged along to a group brunch one Sunday and planted small, casual questions like landmines. "So how was that trip you guys took last month?" I asked Casey, knowing full well my wife claimed she'd gone alone. Casey blinked. "Oh, I didn't end up going," she said quickly. Too quickly. I nodded, sipped my coffee, and changed the subject. Later, when my wife left the table to take a call, Casey turned to me and said, "She's been kinda different lately." Huh? I said nothing, just tilted my head. She added, "I'm sure it's just the new business stuff." I smiled. Of course. By then I'd already cloned her phone. One late night while she was showering, I mirrored it using a free parental control app disguised as a battery optimizer. I had access to her texts, GPS, call logs, and photo backups. I didn't have to wonder anymore. I watched it unfold in real time. Her coordinates pinged at places she never mentioned. Her texts were filled with code names, emojis, half-erased messages. She even had a folder in her notes app with a fake therapy journal, full of affirmations and self-pitying nonsense that painted her as a victim of emotional neglect. Meanwhile, she was scheduling hotel check-ins and sending voice memos to a man saved under the name Aunt Liz. I played one. It wasn't a woman's voice. It wasn't family. It was him. I didn't recognize the voice, but the tone was unmistakable, low, smug, possessive. "I miss how you taste," he said in one. "That little moan you make when I grab your hips." She responded, "You're addictive." I sat there, in my home office, surrounded by the books we bought together, the photos we framed together, the furniture we picked out for our forever home, and listened to the sound of my marriage dying one filthy syllable at a time. But I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Purpose. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about strategy. About timing. I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was constructing a masterpiece. Every lie she told became another nail I'd use to seal her fate. And still, every night, I smiled. I kissed her. I held her when she pretended to be tired. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger. But what she didn't know was that I had already sharpened the blade. And when I finally cut her out of my life, I wouldn't just walk away. I'd leave her standing in the ruins, wondering when it all began to collapse, never realizing it started the moment she underestimated me. I chose the gallery because she loved the place. The minimalist walls, the pretentious lighting, the overpriced wine they served in glasses so thin they felt like they'd shatter under truth. It was a charity showcase, something her company sponsored annually. All glitz and networking and fake smiles layered over white wine breath and soft jazz. She walked in wearing her power dress, the black one with the slit that always made heads turn, her heels clicking like a metronome counting down her final seconds of illusion. I stood near the installation she loved the most, some absurd sculpture of a dismembered mannequin surrounded by shards of mirror. Fitting, really. She spotted me, waved, then leaned over to whisper something to a tall man beside her. He laughed, touched her lower back in a way that would have gone unnoticed to anyone else, but not to me. I watched her detach from him and walk toward me. That same smile she used when she wanted something plastered on her face, like it wasn't cracking beneath the surface. "You came," she said, as if I ever missed one. I nodded. Wouldn't miss it. I handed her a drink, her favorite, Sauvignon Blanc, chilled. She took a sip, eyes scanning the room, calculating. I leaned closer and said, "I wanted to give you something tonight." She arched a brow, intrigued, like she still had control. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the small velvet box she probably assumed was an apology, a renewal, a ring maybe. She opened it slowly, then froze. Inside was a flash drive. "What's this?" she asked, voice dipped in suspicion. "Everything," I said simply, then looked toward the far wall, where the gallery's feature display, a looping silent video projection, had just begun to shift. "You should look up." She turned, still holding the box, and there it was, her, grainy but unmistakable, captured through the mirrored closet doors of a hotel suite. Her legs wrapped around someone who wasn't me. No sound, but the way her body moved, the arch of her back, the look in her eyes, it said more than 1,000 confessions ever could. The room hushed, people turning to see what the installation was, murmurs rising like a tide. Her glass dropped, shattered. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, her voice cracking for the first time. "Art," I said flatly. "Very contemporary. It's called Unfaithful." Her face twisted, eyes darting to find someone, anyone, who'd still believe her. "It's not what it looks like," she said, the first act of the desperate play. "That's old footage. He was just a friend. We were talking." She turned back to me, feigning offense. "You're seriously doing this here?" I stared at her, calm, unmoved. "Just trying to support your career. This crowd appreciates raw honesty, right?" Her lip trembled, but she pressed on, switching tactics. "You've been distant for months. I didn't know where we stood. You shut me out, so you opened your legs instead." I cut in, quietly, but it hit like a hammer. "Guests nearby?" She paled. "You don't get to throw this on me," she hissed. "You were never really there. Not emotionally, not sexually, not. But you stayed." I interrupted, still calm. "You stayed, played wife, wore the ring, cashed the checks, smiled in pictures. You didn't walk away. You waited to rot it from the inside." She was breathing heavier now, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "You know what? Fine," she snapped, voice loud enough to draw even more attention. "Yeah, I screwed up. You were predictable. Boring. I needed more, and I found it. Maybe if you hadn't treated life like a spreadsheet, I wouldn't have had to find someone who made me feel alive." I smiled. "You mean the married man with the fake name and the burner phone?" "Merrick." She flinched. "Oh, don't look shocked. I know everything. I know about the hotel bills, the fake retreats, the notes you left each other in draft emails. I know about the flower deliveries, the gym that never had you on record, and the selfies you took in bed while pretending to be at business dinners. I even know what you said to him about me, how I was convenient." She tried to laugh, but it came out choked. "You're insane. You've been spying on me. That's abuse." I stepped closer, voice a whisper now. "No, sweetheart. What you did, that was abuse. This is accountability." She looked around, searching for a savior. Everyone saw. Nobody moved. The crowd had frozen into statues, sipping wine, pretending to examine the mannequin sculpture while their ears soaked in the carnage. And then her expression shifted, past panic, into something darker. A sneer. "You think this makes you powerful? You just humiliated yourself, too. You'll look like a psycho." I leaned in, brushed a stray hair from her cheek, and said so low only she could hear, "No. I'll look like the man who exposed a liar in her own temple." Her hands shook. She stepped back, bumping into a server who scurried away. "You won't leave me," she said suddenly, as if testing the water. "You need me. No one else will put up with you." That was fear now, rising beneath her voice like bile. I didn't respond. I let the silence grow like a weed, curling around her legs, choking her confidence. The projection looped again. She turned her back to it, as if facing me would make it disappear. I just stood there, eyes locked on hers, silent, still. I wasn't done yet, and she could feel it. The gallery emptied quickly after that, like rats fleeing a sinking ship draped in silk and champagne, and still she stood there, arms folded, breath shallow, eyes wild, cornered, but pretending to be composed, like a fox bleeding from the throat but still baring its teeth. I said nothing, not because I didn't have words, but because the silence was louder than anything she could scream. And scream she did. First it was defensive, grasping for control. "You humiliated me in public," she snapped, voice pitched, her earrings shaking with each movement of her head. "You think this makes you look smart? It makes you look obsessed, unhinged. Normal people talk things through." I stared at her. That was all. And that silence, that complete lack of engagement, it made her twitch. "You want to punish me? Fine. You win. I cheated. Happy now? Was it worth turning into a psycho stalker? You were always paranoid. Always insecure." She stepped closer, finger pointed, and for the first time, her voice cracked. "You smothered me. You hovered. You watched everything I did like I was a criminal." It was exhausting. I tilted my head and finally spoke. "Then why stay?" She blinked, lips parting, no answer ready. "I didn't wait for one. Because you wanted the image. You needed me to be your mask while you dirted the face behind it." Her mouth opened again, but no words came. So she switched gears. "Guilt. I gave you the best years of my life. I sacrificed for you. I turned down job offers. I moved cities. I sat through family dinners with people I hated, all for you. And this is how you repay me." She was crying now, the crocodile kind, tears without pain, wet cheeks without shame. "Do you even realize what this will do to my career?" I just looked at her. "You should have thought of that before making your office your second bedroom." She slapped the drink out of my hand. It shattered. Someone gasped nearby. I didn't blink. "I loved you," she hissed. "No, you didn't," I replied, voice flat. "You loved having someone who made you look good. You loved my patience, not my presence. My income, not my integrity. You loved that I never asked for much, so you could feel like a queen on a borrowed throne." That's when she snapped. "You were boring," she snarled. "A spreadsheet with a pulse. I needed passion. Fire. You gave me routine and rules. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man." I took a step forward, not threatening, just enough to make her feel how small her words were. "And yet you still clung to me. You still wore my name. Slept in my bed. Let me build your world while you infected it. If I'm not a real man, then what does that make you?" She flinched, not at the words, but at how calm they were. How surgical. She tried again, voice rising. "You never made me feel wanted. Do you know what it's like to crave someone's eyes on you and never get it? To walk past your own husband and feel invisible?" I nodded slowly. "Yes. Every day for the past year." She froze. For a second, her face softened, lips trembling not because she was sorry, but because she realized she no longer had the upper hand. "You're not even angry," she whispered, more to herself than me. "No," I replied. "You have to matter to make me angry." Her hands curled into fists. "I made one mistake." "No," I interrupted, stepping into her lie before it could take root. "A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is saying the wrong name in bed once. You built a second life behind my back and decorated it with your dignity. That's not a mistake. That's a decision." She started breathing heavier now, pacing in place like a cornered animal, teeth clenched, mascara bleeding into the cracks of her facade. "You think you're above me now," she spat. "Because you were quiet? Because you played the victim long enough to stage this little scene? You're pathetic." I leaned in just slightly, enough for her to hear me above the thrum of her fury. "No, I'm free. And you're afraid of that more than anything." Her pupil shrank. She knew it was true, knew that for all her words, all her performance, I was unmoved. Her greatest fear wasn't being caught. It was being irrelevant. And that's exactly what she'd become. I stepped back and let the silence fall again. She stood there, trembling, surrounded by the echoes of her own collapse, and for the first time, she realized I wasn't reacting because I wasn't hers anymore. Not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. I was gone, and all that remained was the ghost she created, now holding the mirror up to her rotting soul. She opened her mouth again, probably to launch another attack, but nothing came out. Just a wheeze, a hiccup of breath, like her words were choking on the weight of their own failure. And I just watched. Silent. Cold. Unreachable. She was spiraling now. And the more she spun, the more I stood still. Unmoved. Unforgiving. Untouchable. Revenge, when done right, is not loud. It doesn't scream, it doesn't slam doors, it doesn't punch walls. It whispers, it waits, it moves through the shadows like a surgeon's scalpel, slicing with precision where it hurts most. I didn't want her to cry, I wanted her to crumble. So while she slept in the guest room, clutching the same pillow she used to sob into after every fake apology, I was already halfway through my checklist. I started with the digital trail. Every text, every email, every hotel receipt, every GPS ping, every message she sent to Aunt Liz, all downloaded, backed up, and duplicated in 3 secure folders, one on an encrypted flash drive, one in the cloud under a dummy business email, and one in a secure offline vault with a time-stamped affidavit of collection. She could delete what she wanted from her phone, but I had the raw feed. From there, I moved on to our finances. I'd let her think I was clueless for too long. Quietly, I redirected all our joint income into a new individual account, then froze our shared credit cards due to suspected fraud. I reported both cards compromised, ensuring she'd be holding a dead piece of plastic the next time she tried to buy a soy latte or book a hotel room for 2. I reclaimed the car that was registered in my name. Hers had always been a lease, mine paid off. One late night, while she was sleeping at a friend's, I had it towed back to the dealership and swapped it for a trade-in credit towards something better. I canceled the insurance on hers 2 days later. Let her deal with that call. I rerouted the utilities. Our internet, our gas, our electricity, all under my name, all set to terminate in 3 weeks at our address. She'd assume it was a billing error until the lights started flickering. I left just enough time for her to believe the house was still hers. It wasn't. I'd already consulted with a lawyer. Quietly. Efficiently. Everything was done under a corporate retainer to avoid paper trails she might stumble on. The divorce papers were ready, no fault on paper, but with all evidence attached under sealed exhibits. I'd get the house. She'd get a chance to pack. The dog? He was mine. She didn't even like him. Said his bark annoyed her. She was about to miss that sound more than she realized. But the real strike? That came socially. I crafted a single email, short, polite, and devastating. It went out to her parents, her siblings, her closest friends, and her professional mentor. I included 3 photos, 1 voice recording, and a line that read, "I thought you deserved to know who she really is before she rewrites the story." No commentary. No slander. Just proof. Her mother called me within 10 minutes, crying, apologizing for the daughter she raised. Her boss? That was easier. I forwarded the same package to the HR department, masked through an anonymous email chain. Not vindictive, just concerned. I wrote, "Concerned about the conflict of interest in having a manager using company retreats to rendezvous with a married executive from a partner firm." They launched a quiet investigation within days. Her upcoming promotion vanished without a word. She wouldn't even know it was gone until the meeting invite failed to arrive. I contacted her affair partner's wife too, kindly, discreetly, with compassion. She'd had no idea, but she thanked me, profusely. Apparently, my wife wasn't the only one he'd been seeing. And just like that, their little fantasy imploded. I returned home that night to find her pacing, phone in hand, screaming into voicemail after voicemail. She still thought it was all salvageable. She hadn't noticed yet that the locks had been changed, that her name had been removed from every bill, that her keycard to our shared storage unit no longer worked. I'd even had a locksmith replace the safe in the closet. She confronted me, breathless, trembling. "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" she demanded. I said nothing, just handed her the manila envelope with the divorce papers and walked away. Her scream echoed through the hall, but I didn't flinch. She was unraveling. The walls were closing in, and every brick that collapsed around her had my fingerprints on it. She thought she still had time. Thought there would be a final argument, some emotional crescendo where she could cry, lie, beg, twist. But I'd removed that option. I'd taken it all apart in silence, with strategy, not spite. I didn't need her to feel pain. I needed her to feel powerless. And now, she was surrounded by the very evidence she once thought she'd hidden. Every word she'd whispered in another man's ear, every step she'd taken in secrecy, now dragged into the light for the world to see. Not because I hated her. but because I loved myself enough to burn her fantasy to the ground and build a better world out of its ashes. It happened at her company's spring gala, the one she helped organize every year, the one where she usually stood under the lights holding a microphone, thanking donors, praising her team, basking in the applause of colleagues who thought she was the second coming of Grace Kelly with an MBA. She insisted I come, as if the world hadn't already begun to collapse around her, as if my silence was forgiveness instead of a countdown. I told her I'd be there. I even wore the suit she bought me last Christmas, let her fix my collar like old times, watched her fingers shake as she buttoned it, her eyes searching mine for signs of mercy. There were none. The venue was elegant, crystal chandeliers, live jazz, a garden bar under string lights where everyone whispered about bonuses and IPOs and silent auctions. She floated in like she still owned the room, laughing too loudly, hugging too long, trying to convince them, and herself, that nothing was wrong. But they already knew. Every table she approached turned polite. Smiles too tight, nods too short. People she used to hug barely lifted their glasses. I watched her stumble through the confusion, trying to recalibrate. And then it hit, the moment her lover arrived, not with her, but with his wife. She hadn't known, I told her. Hadn't expected her to show up in a red dress with their kids in tow, smiling like a queen who already claimed victory. Her eyes met mine first, and I nodded. That was all. One nod. She looked past me to my wife, and without a word, handed her a manila envelope. Identical to the one I gave her days ago. It hung in her hand like a corpse's weight. My wife barely opened it before her face drained of color. And then the real collapse began. Her boss approached, phone in hand, whispering something curt and final. She tried to laugh, said, there must be some mistake, but he didn't even respond. Just walked away. Her best friend, Casey, looked at her and said, you lied to me too. Then she turned and joined me at my table. My wife stood there, isolated in the middle of a glittering room, surrounded by people she used to command, now recoiling like she carried disease. She tried to smile, make a joke, even lifted her glass for a fake toast, but no one followed. The silence was deafening. Her lover turned his back on her without a word. His wife never even looked back. My wife's lips trembled. Her glass shook. You're all being ridiculous, she said, voice pitched high like a child denied a toy. This is none of your business. Someone coughed. No one responded. She turned to me then, desperate now, mascara starting to bleed under her eyes, reaching for the one man who'd always caught her when she fell. But I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched. And that's what broke her. She stepped forward, hand half raised, as if to touch my arm. Please, she said, her voice cracking, just tell them it's not what they think. You know me. You know me. I tilted my head. I did, I said. Until you introduced me to someone else. Her lip quivered. They only know part of the story. I smiled. You wrote every word. She opened her mouth, but the words failed. There were no more cards to play. No lies to spin. The room was still. I could feel the tension hanging in the air like humidity before a thunderstorm, but the lightning had already struck. This was just the smoke rising from the wreckage. She stumbled back, trying to compose herself, grabbing a napkin from a waiter's tray to blot her face like she could wipe away her collapse. I built everything, she whispered to herself. I earned this. But now she stood in the same room she'd once ruled, surrounded by silent verdicts and eyes that no longer admired her, but dissected her. Her career, her image, her illusion, burned to ash in the span of 10 minutes. And I was still there, still watching, not gloating, not smiling, just present, unmoving. And she saw it, that I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge screamed from rooftops. My presence alone, calm and composed, was the blade. She fell apart in front of everyone, but it wasn't the evidence, the whispers, or the lover's loss that destroyed her. It was me, still standing, still silent, and gone. It exploded at her parents' house of all places, ironically, during a gathering she called to clear the air with family and friends, as if a potluck and some wine could erase the rot she'd injected into every corner of our lives. Her mother answered the door with a forced smile. Her father didn't even try, and the tension in that house was thick enough to choke on. Everyone was already on edge. Her sister barely made eye contact. Casey lingered in the back like she wanted to disappear. I walked in calm, but coiled, like a wire stretched tight. And she came down the stairs like she still believed she could spin the room to her side, like the shame hadn't sunk in deep enough yet. She opened with the act, of course, arms outstretched, eyes watery, voice trembling like she was the victim. Thank you all for coming, she said, pausing just long enough to catch her breath and the attention of every set of eyes in the room. I know mistakes were made, but I need to speak my truth. That was my cue. I stepped forward, cut through the silence, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, mistakes. Her head snapped toward me. You don't get to redefine betrayal into growth. You cheated. Repeatedly. Lied. Repeatedly. Gaslit me while you were screwing another man in hotel rooms I paid for. Her father closed his eyes. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. The guests froze, wine glasses hovering midair. You don't know everything, she snapped, voice rising. There were things you didn't give me. Attention, affection, support. I gave you a life. I shot back. I gave you loyalty. You gave me disease. She flinched, hard, and that should have been the end of it, but she was too far gone to quit. You were emotionally absent, she shouted, eyes flashing with rage now, hands clenched. You buried yourself in work and expected me to just be your quiet little trophy. And you buried yourself in other men, I said. Don't confuse boredom with justification. You weren't neglected. You were ungrateful. She started toward me, her voice cracking. I loved you. No. I cut her off, loud and clear. You loved the version of me that built you a stage and never asked to step on it. You loved the man who kept your secrets, not the man who finally found them. Someone in the back whispered, damn. Her sister tried to step between us, but she shoved her away. You think this is all my fault? She screamed. You think you were some perfect husband? You didn't see me anymore. You didn't touch me. I felt invisible. You were invisible, I said, stepping forward. Because the real you disappeared a long time ago, replaced by some hollow actress performing love while rehearsing lies. Her friends looked at each other. One of them, clearly unaware of how deep the story went, muttered, Wait, is this about Merrick? I turned toward her. Why don't you tell them, dear? Tell them how many nights he made you feel seen. Tell them how many mornings you came home reeking of someone else's cologne. How many fake therapy sessions you booked just to buy time to sneak off with your affair partner. Go on. Be honest. For once. She shook her head, lip trembling, mascara running. Stop it, she hissed, like a child. You're humiliating me. You humiliated yourself the moment you decided I wasn't enough and started spreading your legs for a man who couldn't even show up to this party. That stung. Hard. Her mother gasped audibly. Her father stood up. Enough, he muttered. But I wasn't done. I turned to the crowd now, sweeping the room. All of you who thought she was some golden child? Read the texts. Watch the videos. I have them all, neatly archived. I didn't come here to gossip. I came here because she invited me to her funeral. The one she threw for her own character. She lunged then, not with fists, but with words. You're disgusting, she spat. No woman will ever want you after this. I laughed, low and sharp. I already found one. You know her. She was standing behind you the whole time, watching you ruin yourself. That stopped her. Dead. Her eyes darted, desperate to find the truth in my face. I didn't give her any. You're bluffing, she whispered. You're lying. No, I said. Just better at keeping secrets than you were. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing now not from sorrow, but from losing. From realizing every rope she once held had slipped through her fingers, and all she had left were eyes staring down at her, judging, disgusted. Someone started filming. I didn't care. She earned this scene, this spectacle. And as she fell apart, shrieking insults, clawing at justifications, drowning in her own drama, I turned, buttoned my jacket, and walked out. No slamming doors, no grand exit speech. Just silence. My dignity intact. Her world in ruins. She disappeared for a few months after the explosion, at first trying to save face with vague social media posts about growth through adversity and letting go of toxic patterns, but it didn't stick. The comments dried up. Her likes vanished. Friends she once bragged about blocked her, unfollowed her, cut her out like a tumor. Her family wouldn't return her calls. Her sister refused to see her. Her father, once her defender in every argument, sent me an email apologizing not for her, but for raising someone capable of that level of betrayal. Her mother sobbed when she dropped off the last box of my ex-wife's things, whispering, she's not the girl I raised. Her job let her go in the most corporate, non-confrontational way possible: performance review, image protection, ethical concerns. The scandal was too much, the whispers too loud. A few of the employees had seen the video at the gallery. One of them uploaded it. Within a week, her name trended on local message boards and gossip threads. She became a cautionary tale, a meme, a warning. She moved out of the city not long after, packed up what was left of her pride, and relocated to some gray little town 2 hours away, where no one knew her face and no one asked about her past. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was working at a boutique furniture store, the kind that sells overpriced end tables to couples pretending they're still in love. Her affair partner ghosted the moment things got loud, deleted his accounts, blocked her number, moved out of state with his wife, who somehow managed to walk away with both the kids and the house. He never said a word to her again. And then, months later, she came to my door. She looked like a reflection of the woman I once knew, similar frame, similar features, but dull, hollow. The fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by something pathetic and twitching, like an old television trying to tune into a channel that doesn't exist anymore. Her clothes hung loose. Her voice was soft. "Can we talk?" she asked, standing on my front porch like a ghost too afraid to knock. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite her in. I just stared. She shifted, bit her lip, and whispered, "I messed everything up." No tears yet. That came later. "You didn't deserve what I did to you. You were a good man. I don't know what I was chasing. I think I thought I could have everything and still come home to you." She wiped at her cheek, voice breaking. "But there's nothing left. No one talks to me. I can't even go to the grocery store without someone whispering, 'I miss you. I miss the life we had. I miss being safe.'" I said nothing. She took a breath, the desperation rising. "I still love you," she said. "Even after everything. I still love you." I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time, truly saw her, not the woman I had married, but the stranger she became. I tilted my head slightly and replied, "Strange. I don't even remember your name anymore." She broke then, visibly, audibly. Fell apart right there on the porch, sobbing into her hands while the life she shattered played in her head like a horror film on loop. I let her cry. I didn't comfort her. I didn't close the door either. I just watched. She chose this. She carved this path with every lie, every secret, every moment she thought I was too dull to see. Now she lived in the ashes, hoping I might offer her a match. I didn't. After a few more agonizing minutes, she stood, shaky and broken, gave me one final look of desperate longing, and walked away, slow, defeated, like every step cracked her bones. I never saw her again. Never wanted to. She was gone long before she showed up on my doorstep. And as the sun set behind her retreating figure, I said the last words she would ever hear from me, low, final, like a verdict. "You burned a kingdom for a spark. Don't cry when it turns to smoke." Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it hit the way it was meant to. Let me know where you're from and if you enjoyed it, because there's plenty more where that came from.